Nevada's ranching industry is really dwindling, in part because of a brutal and persistent drought, but also because of competition from an unlikely source, and that's a public agency.
Veteran ranchers in Nevada say they're being ground to dust in multiple ways by a rival operation that happens to be owned by the Southern Nevada Water Authority. The I-Team's George Knapp reports.
You know, it only takes 50 years to be an overnight success.
Veteran rancher Hank Vogler has his hands full. It's shearing day when a traveling team of razor-wielding pros sets up shop on his property to process a long line of nervous sheep. Each one gets clipped, shaved, then booted out a chute. Slightly stunned, but okay. Huge blocks stuffed with high-quality wool stack up to form a massive wall around the operation, the harvest from a full year of tough work in a harsh environment. Nevada has been sheep country since the 1800s, but Vogler knows he's one of the last stockmen standing.
We could hold our convention about right there, all of us, or in a phone booth.
In a good year, Vogler's profit margin is slim. But the biggest threat to his survival these days, Vogler says, is his neighbor, the big guy on the block, a sprawling ranching operation owned and operated by the Southern Nevada Water Authority.
This is what I spent my entire life trying to do, and now I'm trying to be shoved out of business, pushed aside, destroyed. My entire life savings is going down the crapper.
Over the past few years, Vogler says, it's been death by 1,000 cuts. He was one of the most outspoken opponents of SNWA's plan to siphon billions of gallons of groundwater from rural Nevada via a pipeline to Las Vegas. SNWA paid $79 million to buy up surrounding ranches, many times their market value back then, to serve as anchor properties for the so-called water grab. That multi-billion-dollar boondoggle was formally shelved a few years ago, but SNWA has held on to the ranches and has spent millions of public dollars to raise cattle and sheep. The ranch manager has had multiple confrontations with his neighbors.
He knew nothing about sheep.
Vogler says his men have been threatened, his equipment vandalized, his water rights challenged. More recently, he was charged with trespassing his sheep on grazing land he's used for decades.
You're looking pretty silly.
The BLM offered to let him off the hook if he pled guilty, but Vogler saw that as a trap and is fighting back in court against an opponent with deep pockets of public money. Every court motion costs Vogler thousands of dollars, mere chump change to the other guys.
I just paid a law bill for last month. It's $15,000 for one lawyer. I now have two. I mean, they're just dragging me down by my guts until I go broke.
Vogler doesn't think government should be in business competing against smaller private owners. He and his neighbors further argue that federal statutes are clear. No government entity can have federal grazing permits, but SNWA does.
I'm the fifth generation.
Another Nevada rancher, Kenna Glockner, whose family has lived on the same Lincoln County land since the 1860s, says she's hanging on by her fingernails because the SNWA ranch commandeered the rangeland assigned to her herds for more than half a century, just took it over. She hired lawyers and won a costly battle. Then SNWA started a federal appeals process that will freeze her out of her range for a decade or more, an expensive process the SNWA can afford, but she cannot.
Why are they overrunning everyone? Why are they having all these complaints and battles? And the only solution, I mean, the only answer we can come up with is that we're in their way.
Maybe they want you to react with violence.
Absolutely. Then they can see what kind of people we have to deal with. Well, I am not the brightest bulb in the drawer, but I am not the dimmest bulb either. Don't try and gaslight me.
SNWA is a government body competing against private enterprise. We previously asked how they can graze livestock on public land when federal regulations state that government agencies are barred from getting grazing permits. SNWA says their lawyers advise them that they can. SNWA declined to comment about Vogler's allegations because they say the matter is in the courts. George Knapp, 8 News Now.